the Cobras Anti-Poaching Unit. This is an outfit that we've dreamed up a couple of years ago, but are busy. They're busy on the ground now. They're a new group of young people who we've got working around the boundary of Hwange National Park. They're on the ground right now as we speak, doing good things. But let me tell you a little bit about their story. We model our Cobras team a lot on a group of guys from down the place called Malalangwe in the far southeast of Zimbabwe. And there they've got over 100 rangers who protect over 300 rhino. And this is a really highly motivated, very well trained, well equipped and well paid group of guys who are really a model for what a privately funded law enforcement anti-poaching group can be. And these are the guys that we have learned a lot from. What we started off, we went into the villages around our lodges and around the boundary of the park, and we spoke to the headmen, we spoke to the community leaders and the headmasters of the schools and said, give us the best of your best. Find me the best young people that you have there, and let's have them, and we're going to train them, and we're going to put them into our Cobras unit. And there's, right at the beginning, our first couple of days of selection course, this was testing guys for their physical skills and fitness and doing brutal star jumps. One of the football fields near Ngamo. You hear they're running up and down the football field at Ngamo, just testing them out before we chose the group that we eventually took down to Matopa's Hills. Now, the Matopa Hills are just south of Bulawayo, about 100 miles from where these young men grew up. And this was really taking them out of their comfort zone, throwing them off kilter. And we've got Sergeant Thomas Mbiza there, great training instructor from the national parks, and he's putting them through their paces. Lots of hills for them to run up and down, and lots of drill training, get them disciplined, get them working together, coordinated as a unit, and lots of physical training. Press-ups and more press-ups, and even press-ups with your partners on your back, more press-ups. But what happened is by the time we'd finished our phase one of our training here, we had a group of guys who were both keen, fit, motivated. Any of the guys that weren't keen and fit and motivated had opted out and decided to go home. And there's Sergeant Thomas with his guys, with his recruits. When we took them back to Ngamo, we had a passing out parade for them. This was the passing out parade, recruits parade for phase one. And we got all the local villagers came in, all of their parents and families, local chiefs, local dignitaries to come down and inspect the passing out parade. What a great day it was for these guys. Showed off their stuff, cheering villagers, lots of clapping hands, lots of grins, lots of proud young men. They've got jobs, they've got a reason to be again going forward. And there's best recruit getting his prize issued to him by the member in charge from our local police. And he got a big sheath knife as best recruit. And looking on there is Baba Mlevo, shaking hands there. He's our local chief, a wonderful man and a great promoter of conservation, and really a pioneer for what we've managed to achieve in this area. And proudly looking on there, Daniel Tablanche, ex-British military. He's our security manager, and he's been leading the charge with training our Cobras. And a proud salute before we march off. What happens there, we march off, we head off to phase two. In phase two, we set up an APU, an anti-poaching unit base, at what we call the Bejan base at Ngamo there. And that's just not far from our lodge at Bamani, and only about 2 miles from the national park boundary. And there's the national park boundary over here. What's going to be happening is our guys are going to be training on the ground, on the periphery of Hwange National Park, and doing all kinds of good things in terms of conservation for the park. There's the base that we set up, a couple of barrack rooms, mess hall, bathrooms, loo, and water and shower for them. And of course, a parade ground over here for doing their stuff, and pull-up bars and for doing the exercise. And then they got their uniforms, and we had them ready to enter phase two, proud and keen, and looking forward to the next phase of their training. Next phase of their training, a lot more fun. It's camouflage and concealment. Guys practicing ambush drills here. You can see there's Cedric Moyo, who's one of our patrol leaders, and he's got his walkie-talkie, and proud and fit and strong, well-fed and well-motivated, getting on with phase two training. Phase two training included a lot of actual bookwork. He has lectures behind the barrack room, taking down notes. I believe that day was map reading and radio skills. And here, training includes lots of different facets. These guys need to be able to take care of themselves in what can be dangerous situations. This is first aid training. And here we're practicing both mouth-to-mouth and CPR. And the guys are looking on and learning just basic first aid drills. There's getting a sweet spot for the CPR. And, of course, live drills, okay? Yeah, we actually set up guys who supposedly had gunshot wounds and had to evacuate them back to a safe place where we were going to now actually set up and do live first aid training. Here's more CPR training. And there's Cedric getting on with doing some CPR work there while one of the other guys is ready on standby to do mouth-to-mouth. What's really cool is our Cobras have got so good at their first aid is they're even training staff at Camelthorne Lodge nearby. And that's Dudu, one of our camp manageresses there, and Eric, one of our guides, who are getting some practicing on their CPR drills as well. And, of course, radio work on patrol. Hey? Here's the guys now. They're practicing radio reporting. They're down at Major Pan, just inside the boundary of the park, and they're reporting what they're seeing and learning to give concise, clear radio communication. And while they're there, doing all kinds of other things too. The other guys are doing a little bit of basic maintenance on the watering troughs. This particular watering trough is an elephant watering trough, but later on in the day they were doing the same at the cattle watering troughs, looking after both wildlife and the communities. But this photograph illustrates something that's a very important part of any anti-poaching unit's training. And this is the feet of a poacher. That poacher had wrapped his feet in both foam and socks, so he can walk around the bush and very, very hard. He's not leaving tracks. And what's very important is teaching our guys tracking, both tracking skills and anti-tracking. And off on the left, there's a guy who's maybe one of the best trackers I know in our part of the world, a guy called Richard Ngube. And he's the tracking instructor for the Cobras. He teaches them everything he knows about tracking. And there's one of the guys, he's picked up a footprint there. And on this particular day, the instructors were actually trying to evade the Cobras, who are now tracking along behind and trying to capture them. And I remember that particular day, they actually caught their instructors, and a lot of roughhousing and lots of good fun was had that day when they did catch them. There you can see Richard pointing out something that one of the younger guys hadn't seen, just teaching them what to look for and where to look. Excuse me. But while they're also out there, they're doing lots of good stuff too. And there's one of those terrible, dreaded wire snares I was talking about. So they're patrolling and they're looking and training, but they're also picking up wire snares. And that's the wire snare being put on a game trail, obviously to catch a buffalo or a kudu. And my guys, they're showing you what happens when an animal walks into a wire snare and gets strangled. And that's what one of those wire snares look like, braided wire made into a noose. And we've got it wrapped up and we're taking it back to base. When we get to back to base, we stack it up there. And those are wire snares the guys picked up over about a 6-month period during their phase 2 training. Hundreds and hundreds of these wire snares, some fresh, but most of them old. And you can imagine the damage those things would have done to the wildlife around the periphery of Hwange National Park. This gets me to a story here, and we spoke earlier about the unintended consequences of these wire snares. And this is a young female cheetah. Later on, we named her Cindy. At the time that she, you can see there, she picked up a wire snare. She'd gone walkabouts, one of the terrible wire snares she'd got around her neck. Fortunately, she'd managed to bite herself free. She'd bitten through the wire snare, but now she was walking around inside Hwange Park, dragging this terrible wire snare. We relocated her and darted her with a tranquilizer drug. And on this particular day, then we took the wire snare off from around her neck. And that's my friend Sib Sabanda, who's our head guide at Camelthorne Lodge, with a wire snare we took off from around her, and Paul de Montiel, who was the wildlife dangerous drugs expert who had darted that day. Those are my 2 daughters who were helping that day. We took the wire snare off Cindy. What was the wonderful ending to that story was that Cindy now had cubs of her own. And this is a picture about 8 or 9 months later. And there's Cindy. She had some cubs. And she managed, as a first-time mom, to raise 1 male cub. Tough place for a first-time mom to raise cheetah inside the park there. Lots of hyena, lots of lioness competition. But while she was raising her boy cub, the next door female cheetah, cheetah we call Queenie, and there she is just behind her, who's actually Cindy's mom, was also raising a couple of cheetah cubs. And there they are, there 2 also boy cubs. Some guests of ours there taking pictures of them. But when they dispersed off, Queenie's 2 boy cubs and Cindy's boy cub linked up together to make a coalition. That's a three cheetah male coalition that now dispersed from their moms and were heading off on their own. You can imagine 3 young teenage boys getting away from mom with their hungers and their appetites, going out hunting and looking for stuff to eat. But sadly, what started to happen, and our Cobras quickly picked it up, is these cheetahs started to leave the park. And there's the park fence on our left here. And they started to pick up the tracks of these cheetahs leaving the park. When cheetahs are leaving the park, you know they're probably going to be up to mischief because they're heading into the villages and they're heading into areas where there's people and domestic livestock. And of course, on this particular day, it led to a tragedy. That young calf belonging to one of the villagers had their calves killed by that cheetah that day. And it was eaten by the cheetah. What happened then is our guys kept patrolling along that park boundary regularly to try and locate these cheetahs whenever they were leaving the park. And again, tragedy struck. But each time that these cheetah left the park and killed an animal, our guys were on them and chased them back to the park. And I'm really, really proud to say that that particular donkey was the last animal killed by those cheetah about 6 months ago. And since then, these continuous patrols and the harassment that those cheetahs have received has forced them to stay inside the park. And there those 3 cheetah are. We see them regularly now inside the park, and they are have given up leaving the park and harassing the local villagers and their domestic livestock. I'm really, really proud to say that that's a great success story for what our Cobras have achieved. And what it's become is not so much just an anti-poaching unit anymore, and we've changed them. It's the Cobras Community and Wildlife Protection Unit, both looking after wildlife and looking after communities along the periphery of Hwange National Park. And doing that even now as we speak, while this terrible pandemic is sweeping our world and tourists are not traveling to our country anymore, our boys are there on the front lines doing their work, looking after communities and looking after wildlife. Very, very proud of what they're doing. Thanks very much.